My first Melbourne Marathon was in 2011, and it was a crazy and funny experience. And I thought I'd share some of those things with you because it'll might help you prepare you for your marathon, but also I think you'll just enjoy the tale. So I'd started running about 18 months or so before, and I'd followed the rule of thumb that people had taught me at that time is you should be running for at least a year before you attempt your first marathon. So the first year I ran a couple of half marathons and that went pretty well. And then I felt I was prepared to have a go at a marathon. Formed a running club at my work, and one of the guys there ran his first marathon the year before. So he was going to turn around and run his second, and I was going to run my first, and that was going to be great. Now this bloke, I won't tell any tales, but his nickname in the running group, we all called him No Plan. Wasn't the most well-planned fellow, as you can imagine. So I got there early on race day. Well, I prepared well to begin with, I must say. I got there early on race day, waiting for my mate, No Plan. Now, he'd had some convoluted scheme on how he was going to get to the beginning of the race, the start for the Melbourne Marathon. No worries, except being a disorganised guy, he was running late. And so but from my point of view, I was super nervous. I'm waiting for this guy. I thought he'll turn up. He's done one of these things before. I'll talk to him. That'll calm my nerves and I'll feel much better about it. Well, I'm waiting, and eventually I think I've got to go in the corrals here and just get ready to go. And I don't know where No Plan is, but I think he's lived up to his name today, which is a bit disappointing because I was looking forward to his company. Anyway, that's what happened. So the race starts. We take off up Batman Avenue, went up there, turned the corner into Flinders Street, come round St Kilda Road. You know, it was really crowded. I'm going okay. I'm just starting to settle into my pace. But as I do that, who do I see materialise there next to me but my old mate, No Plan. So that was great. I thought, we finally caught up with each other. Surprised we could find each other in the crowd. There was probably, I'm not sure, I think there was around 5,000, 4,500 starters that day. So there we are. And I was thinking, well, now we've met, we'll probably run together for, 2 or 3 kilometres and might go our separate ways after that. But No Plan had other ideas. And I guess my first marathon, I didn't have huge goals, but I was thinking if I could break 4, that'd be nice. And I didn't think I was going too slow, put it that way. I was going at a fair clip, and No Plan and I were similar runners at that time. So I was surprised when he took off and left me for dead. I thought, well, he knows more than me, I suppose. We'll see what happens. So went along there, St Kilda Road, and we turned down towards Albert Park. Come through there, that is a good part of the race. At this stage, my main thing was to slow myself down. I was feeling great, but I saw, and No Plan told me about this. He said, you got to watch out for this guy. He's a Spartan legend. Runs in his sandals, khaki pants, and has an old school backpack. Now, actually, this bloke, his name's Francis, he's actually become a firm friend of mine since then, but he was a well-known figure in the marathon there and like that. And of course, I did come across Francis running in his particular get-up and drawing a lot of attention to himself as he chalked off another Melbourne Marathon. So that was quite memorable. Other thing was there was this pacer. Now, you imagine first Melbourne Marathon, I'm trying to figure out how fast I should be going. I was wondering, am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? All that stuff. And coming through Albert Park there, and I see a guy, one of the pacers. Now they had numbers on their front. Their time, like 3 hours 40 or whatever it was, 3:50, on the front of their singlet and on the back. And then they also had a big balloon, a helium balloon that was attached to them as well so that people could spot them. So I thought, that's great. This guy was a bit in front of me and I was just working to try and catch up to him over about 1 kilometre or 2. I thought, when I do, I can see what time he's going for. Well, now, again, regular watchers might realise that I've never had a lot of affinity for paces, or in South Africa, they call them bus drivers. I prefer to run my own race, and I never know what the plans are for these people, right? That's what I don't like about it. Anyway, so although people like this guy really helped ingrain that view, because I come up to him, he stuck the connection for the balloon over his time number, and I just couldn't see it. I get past him, I couldn't really see over my shoulder to see what it was from there. So I was, for all that hard work, I was none the wiser. Now the sequel to that story, by the way, is I did see him again. Later on, I saw him broken down by the side of the road, probably somewhere around Fitzroy Street, I think, which sort of the course all leaps back in. So I don't know his story there, but it wasn't a good one. And his the fact that he couldn't put his numbers and balloons on properly really didn't give me a lot of confidence that he was ready for this race. I couldn't help think that maybe he'd had a big night the night before. But anyway, I left him behind and came along, and then you come down to the foreshore there and you run along that, and I was running all right there. I was actually feeling really good at this point. You run up and then kind of into the wind, and then you turn back and run away from the city at that point. And that was good. I came through halfway running well. And I remember starting to think, I wonder where No Plan is. I think I had seen him around Albert Park. There's an out and back at the pits for the Grand Prix there. And I had seen him there. I think he was a few minutes in front of me at that point. And I guess at this point I'm starting to think, well, am I being too conservative here? Maybe I can go a bit faster, you know. I'm travelling pretty well. I'm feeling good. So we kept going down there, away from the city, along the foreshore, and and eventually then just as turnaround point, about 25, 26k, and at that point I saw No Plan coming the other way, and he wasn't that far in front of me. So this is where you could tell it was my first marathon. Now, don't do this. So I'm about 25k's in. I've been running all right, but I've got 17k still to go. And I dropped the hammer at that point, and I ran a sub 5 kilometre. Look back on it later, I ran like a 4-minute 50 or something. I was probably doing low 5s before that, although I think I'd sped up a bit in my hubris. So I did that. I dropped the hammer, and of course, as we came then caught up with, rather than trying, what I should have done is say, okay, I'm catching Mark, No Plan. I'll just keep what I'm doing, and I'll run him down eventually. But instead, I foolishly decided to try and get him in 1 kilometre, which I think I did actually, but it was nuts anyway. So I caught up to No Plan, see how he was going. He didn't seem too bad, to be honest. He was a bit surprised to see me, which made me feel good. And I then kept going on my way back towards town. And that normally is a pretty tough leg. Don't think it was too bad, actually. But I did that. By the time I got to Fitzroy Street, then I was starting to struggle. So I went up Fitzroy Street there, which, to be honest, if you live locally there, if you're out for a run, you don't even notice that there's a hill. Like, it's tiny. But when you're 30k's into a marathon, it feels like a mountain, that hill. It is really dramatic and a big impact, and it's normally one of the tough points of Melbourne Marathon, actually, getting up that hill. They typically have a drink station at the top, which is nice, but often instead of rushing through, I'm making sure I get a drink or two and keep me going. Of course, it depends on the weather of the day. It wasn't too bad this particular day. So I did that, coming down round the corner on the St Kilda Road, and I was I was going okay here. But then I got a massive cramp in one of my calves. And I had to stop running. It was so bad. I did some quick stretching and then managed to start walking and then a bit of running just to shake it out and loosen it out. But at this point, that was the end of me chasing a time. That was all over, bar the shouting at that point. So I really changed my mind. At that point, I think I was ahead of the 340 pacer. And then the 340 group, rounded me up pretty quickly there on St Kilda Road. And anyway, I didn't give up. Kept going there, but it was a lot harder. So did that, came down, turned around past the Arts Centre, you loop back under the road and up into the Botanical Gardens. Well, as I turned up the hill to come into the gardens, you can see how this reflects how well I was going or not going. Forget the 340 pacer, now the 350 pacing group caught up to me. And we were going up again. That's another one of these slight rises that years later when I was training for comrades, I was trying to do hill repeats on that hill because I thought that would help prepare me for comrades. And there's no hill. Like it's 1% gradient or something. It hardly exists. I couldn't do hill repeats on it. It wasn't significant enough. But when by this stage, it's about 35 kilometres or something into the marathon. When you're that far in, it feels like a mountain. So there I was there, 3 hour 50 paces caught me. And at that point, because fortunately they had slowed for the hill to try and keep the group that they did have together. And so I hooked in to that group at that point and went up the hill with these guys, and we were going on a fair clip actually, and I was going all right, pretty quickly. I dug deep, and so we went up the hill and you go all the way to the top of the gardens and turned down to Main Road. It was actually years, it wasn't until next year I even figured out where I was, to be honest. I was just hanging on with this group, just watching those guys and just putting in, trying to stay with them. So I probably put in about 2K with these guys, maybe it was a bit more. It wasn't until we came to the drink station you loop back onto St Kilda Road, and there's a drink station before the bridge there. It's probably about 39K or something. And they didn't stop, or they burned through it, and I had to get a drink. And once I did that, then they were gone and I couldn't run. So now it's quite bizarre really. I was going so quickly, but now I'm just struggling to run at all. And I'm now going with the pace. So for that particular Melbourne Marathon, they had, at that stage in the race, you were mingled with half marathoners there. And I was doing 9-minute Ks, and I was sort of just blending in with the 3-hour half marathoners at this point. And I was really battling, and I was saying to myself, if somebody came along and offered me a large sum of money, go faster, I wasn't going faster. It just was not possible, not humanly possible for me to go any faster now. I'm going to trudge in at 9-minute Ks from here, and hopefully I'll sneak in under 4 hours. It's a bit touch and go now, but I think I'll be able to do that. So that's what I'm going to do, what I'm going to have to do, because I can't do anything else now. Anyway, so I'm doing that. I'm going along the road and I'm trudging along. And then lo and behold, who should materialise beside me but my old mate, No Plan. Now, I thought he was just going to burn past me and leave me there. And not that we were having a race, but I guess at that point we could have considered that we were, both of us, and he would have won. So, and it turned out he'd put his last bit of energy, he'd seen me up ahead and put his last bit of energy into catching me, and he was done. So I was so happy to see him. And I really learned a lot then about the mental side of running, because talking to No Plan, Mark, all my woes, I forgot about them. All the pain, all these difficulties I was having, they were gone, and I was just talking to him. And we then, like I said, I couldn't have, no matter how much money he offered me, I couldn't have run faster than 9-minute Ks. Well, now we're running 7-minute 30 Ks. I know it's not going to break any records, but it's a heck of a lot faster than what I was doing. And Mark's struggling, and I'm encouraging him because I'm now doing it easier, even though he could have run straight past me. That would have been it. And then, so we did that. We just hung together. Now, that year, it was a finish outside of the MCG. They've finished both places. I think most people prefer the inside, but this was outside. And hanging there, ran together, and then we crossed the finish line together in 3 hours 55. And it was such a good feeling to realise that now I'm a marathoner. And also, it was really nice to finish with No Plan, because despite some of the funny things that happened that day, he was a good friend, and it was great to do it together, and really special moment. And then of course, we went off to the pub later to have a beer to celebrate. But great experience, and that got me started on the road to become a Spartan. That was the first of my finishes, the 12 I've got at the moment, and that was a really good one and a memorable one. So thanks again for listening and watching.